Week 4 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire this week. The first back, Braylon Allen of the New York Jets. Braylon Allen, he was mentioned on the waiver wire list last week and still out there right now in 64% of fantasy leagues. So he got a lot of meaningful plays early in that game for the New York Jets. So week 1, he didn't see much work at all. In the last 2 weeks, week 2 with Tennessee, 7 carries, 33 yards, a touchdown, and then 2 catches, 23 yards, and a touchdown onto that. And week 3 versus the Pats, he did get 11 carries, 55 yards, and 3 catches, 13 yards. So they don't want to run Breece Hall completely into the ground. Braylon Allen, 20 years old, big physical running back, who, if he could get 8 to 12 touches per game, I think he could be a decent flex option for fantasy owners, as the bye weeks are coming up sooner than later in the next few weeks. And also, if Breece Hall goes down, he's one of the better handcuffs, if not the best handcuff, I believe, in fantasy football. So right now, Braylon Allen, this might be the last chance for owners to go out there and get him. He has a role in this offense, and like I said, if Breece Hall went down, he's a top 10, 15 running back weekly. Next running back, Cam Akers of the Houston Texans. Joe Mixon, he came back last week in that game, and then he didn't practice all week and sat out, and Cam Akers filled in. And he didn't get a lot of work, but he had 9 carries, 21 yards leading the backfield, and a catch, 8 yards, and a touchdown, where Houston, they were down early and often, and they didn't really run the football and couldn't get anything going offensively. So Akers, he got all the touches pretty much in the backfield, still out there in 54% of fantasy leagues. And we got to see the status for Joe Mixon entering this week here for fantasy owners. So Akers, still go out there and get him on the waiver wire. He led the team in touches, like I said. Not the greatest of running backs, but it's tough to find running backs this time of year. Next running back, Bucky Irvin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucky Irvin, he's definitely closing in on now touching and get more touches as the week goes on. For Bucky Irvin, since week 1, played pretty good football. Week 1 versus the Commanders, 9 carries, 62 yards, 2 catches, 14 yards. Week 2 with Detroit, 7 carries, 22 yards. In week 3, he averaged, once again, a big yards per carry is Bucky Irvin, with about 8 yards per carry, 9 carries, 70 yards, and added 3 catches, 14 yards. So Rachaad White, we know in between the tackles, his yards per carry isn't that good. And we also know if he's not catching the football out of the backfield, Rachaad White's pretty much not bringing anything for fantasy owners. So like I said, Bucky Irvin, as the weeks go on, he's going to get more of a workload. Last week he had 12 touches, Bucky Irvin, and combined 11 Rachaad White, with only 6 carries to Irvin's 9 and 5 catches for Rachaad White. So White last season, like I said, he had a monster year in terms of catching the football, but in between the tackles and yards per carry wasn't doing much. Bucky Irvin, a rookie this season, and they like what they're seeing from him, and he had a lot of good runs in this ball game. I know it was a blowout loss versus the Denver Broncos, but Bucky Irvin take over a 60-40 split the way it's looking as the weeks go on, because he's definitely looked like the more impressive back. The next running back, Rico Dottle of the Dallas Cowboys. Zeke Elliott, he didn't touch the ball much in the week 3 loss versus the Baltimore Ravens. And Rico Dottle, 8 carries, 32 yards, 3 catches, 24 yards. Cowboys were down early and often in that one, where they didn't run the football, and Dak dropped back, threw the football over 45 times. But Dottle, the last 2 weeks now, he's out-touched Zeke, and he's been getting anywhere from 8 to 10 fantasy points. Week 2 versus New Orleans, 7 carries, 30 yards, 4 catches, 29 yards. And week 3 versus Baltimore, 8 carries, 32 yards, and 3 catches, 24 yards. So week 4 coming up quickly for this Cowboy team, where they got a matchup at the New York Giants, where they've had trouble all season for the most part stopping opposing offenses. I know they played better versus the Cleveland Browns, but I think this could be one of the games where Rico Dottle actually gets a chance to get a decent workload of 12, 15 carries and add a couple catches out of the backfield. So Dottle available in 58% of fantasy league, and right now he looks like the favorite over there, in my opinion, for the Dallas Cowboys touching the football. Next running back I looked at, Samaje Perine of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Samaje Perine, he got some work in the week 3 victory at the Atlanta Falcons. 6 carries, 25 yards, 3 catches, 15 yards on 4 targets. He's going to be the third down back and get some in between the tackle work, where we saw Carson Steele actually had 18 touches total in that victory at the Atlanta Falcons. I know Kareem Hunt, they signed to the practice squad. Also, Keontae Ingram, they signed off the practice squad as well. Looks clear that Carson Steele, he's the early downs back, in between the tackles back, and Samaje Perine will be mixed in at times, and also the passing and long third down back for this Kansas City Chiefs team. So if you need a guy to catch the football a little bit out of the backfield, and get 9-12 touches per ball game. That's what Samaje Perine's going to do for this Kansas City Chief team. And right now, he's available in 64% of fantasy league. Next back, Alexander Mattison of the Vegas Raiders. He's been on the radar since week 1, is Alexander Mattison. Numbers aren't great, but he's definitely outplayed Zamir White. And the passing downs back as well for this Vegas Raider team. To start the season, week 1 at the Chargers, 5 carries, 19 yards, 4 catches, 43 yards, a touchdown. Week 2 at Baltimore, 4 carries, a rushing touchdown, 1 yard. And week 3 versus the Panthers, 3 carries, 7 yards, the rushing touchdown, and 3 catches, 37 yards. So like I said, he's the receiving back. Even though it's a bad situation in that backfield, him and Zamir White, if I had to start one of these players, it's not a good thing. But obviously, anytime there's a running back out there could produce, you go out there and get him on the wire. Zamir White, once again, he didn't do much. Only 10 carries, 34 yards in the week 3 blowout loss to the Carolina Panthers. And this team, it looks like they're going to be trailing early and often. The majority of the season is this Vegas Raider team. Right now, Alexander Mattison, he's available in 69% of fantasy leagues. Next running back, Emmanuel Wilson of the Green Bay Packers. Emmanuel Wilson, he had the same amount of touches in that game as Josh Jacobs, even though I know it was a blowout ball game pretty early where the Green Bay Packers got off to a big start on the Tennessee Titans. But Emmanuel Wilson, backup running back now. Marshawn Lloyd, he went on IR with the ankle injury last week. And Wilson, he looked good. And even in week 1 when he was the backup, he had 4 carries, 46 yards, 2 catches, 2 yards. Week 2, he didn't see the field really. And then week 3 at Tennessee, like I said, he got a healthy workload, 12 carries, 50 yards, 2 catches, 35 yards on a touchdown on a 30-yard screen. So Wilson, he's going to get touches. I know this game he got more touches than what we're going to see as the weeks go on. Available right now, 97% of fantasy leagues. And we know LaFleur, he always likes a committee, not one running back getting 30, 35 touches. I know it happened to Josh Jacobs in week 2 what that happened, but still Marshawn Lloyd was mixed in, and Wilson, even in that week 2 ball game, got 5 carries. So I think Wilson weekly could carve out 8 to 12 touches between carries and catching the football out of the backfield. And I believe he's a valuable handcuffed as well. Like I mentioned, available in 97% of fantasy leagues. Next running back, or Beatty of the Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, for the most part, just haven't been doing it for this Denver Bronco team. And we know, going back to his days with New Orleans for Sean Payton, he likes to use a committee of running backs. We saw it, Alvin Kamara over there with the Saints, Mark Ingram. And now here we're seeing it with the Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and now Beatty getting in there. And he got some touches, 9 carries, 70 yards in that game. I know they were up big. The whole game was the Denver Broncos in week 3. But to see someone to come out, get 9 touches, rush for 70 yards, great yards per carry, 8 yards per carry. Someone definitely to mention. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and out-touch everyone in the backfield weekly, but in week 3, he did his Beatty, and someone to keep an eye on. Available in 99% of fantasy leagues. And the final running back, I looked at off the wires, Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Bigsby, I know he's playing Monday night. I know week 2 he got hurt early in that game with the shoulder. But let's go back to week 1, 12 carries, 73 yards, and he was the more efficient back in that week than Travis Etienne. I still think it's Travis Etienne's backfield, obviously, for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. But Tank Bigsby, he was a highly touted prospect last season in the NFL draft. Obviously, his rookie year last year, he didn't do much. Week 1, he looked good. And a lot of good reports came out in training camp this season about him, where they even said Doug Peterson, he was going to get touches. So right now, Tank Bigsby, Monday night, you could still go out there and get him off the wire right now. But waivers not clearing for the Monday night players until the ball game starts. If you've got an open roster spot and want to stash Bigsby and see what happens in that Monday night game, and I believe he's going to get some work at the Bills, he's an ad this week, available in 84% of fantasy leagues. That's a few running backs I looked at off the wire for week 4 of the fantasy football season.